Welcome, loves, to another episode of About Her. I'm really, really excited for today because I have the wonderful Ruby with me. Ruby, thank you so much for joining. I'm happy that we made it today, and I would love to ask you for starters to share a bit about yourself, as however much you're comfortable with, so that we can kind of get a feeling before we start in to talk about different cycles we have within nature and ourselves, and how everything is waving together.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honour to talk about this stuff because I'm really passionate about it. So I'm Ruby and my business is called Dotty Delightful, and I'm an artist, designer and zine maker, but I also really encourage women to truly be authentically themselves. That might be an event, a workshop, a one-to-one, group settings, through creativity, through talking, through getting interested in nature. I've got a real passion about it. So briefly, I was a teenage mum, and then I had 3 children by the time I was 21. I was in a domestic violent relationship for 8 years. And then I was a single mum for 8 years. And at that time, I was crackers. I was totally off the rails, taking drugs, drinking, just doing all the normal things that I was going to say normal people do. The people that have not done any work on themselves do, or that have not discovered anything new. And through a series of events, I ended up painting a picture of my ideal man. I had 52 boyfriends in that time. I only know that because I used to write them in a book. And I've had enough of them. They were just, no, I just couldn't. So I was single for 2 years, no boyfriends or anything. And then I painted this picture of my ideal man, what he looked like, what he said, all the things that he did. And then 3 months later, Tom appeared, my partner, and that was 18 years ago. And
Wow.
I think we needed to come together because he was very similar to me in the lifestyle. And somehow, and we can't remember how, he heard about The Secret. I think he was reading a book and the law of attraction. And we sat and watched. We had one computer, which was Tom's, that he brought to the house. And we sat on one chair together and watched this documentary about The Secret and the law of attraction. And something in our brains switched on. And it was like, whoa, there's something different. So from that point, we're now vegan. We've been sober for 17 years. We're completely natural in everything that we do, everything that we put on our bodies. It's been a massive change, and there's been, I call them light bulb moments. There's been light bulb moments throughout my life to get to this point that I am now. It's been one heck of a journey, and my eldest son's autistic, and he was having really violent outbursts, setting fire to things, chopping up furniture and stuff. And had been since he was 2, so he was vaccinated when he was 2, and the day after he was different. It's like his light had switched off, and he was banging his head against the fridge, screaming. So from the age of 2 to 15, I kept taking him to doctors, to so-called professionals, to mental health services, to everything, and he kept saying there's something not right with him. Bearing in mind I had 2 other children as well, so they could see there was a difference. And they kept saying it was me. First of all, it was because I was a teenage mum. Then it was because I was a single parent. All these things. Nobody ever listened. And then when he was 15, he set fire to a park. And the police came and the fire brigade came. And they put the fire out. And he was in front of the fire truck. And he set another fire. And this fireman was like, this kid's not right. Kids don't do that. And the fireman and a policeman wrote a letter for me each. And I took that to the doctors, and they finally listened that there was something quite right with James. So he went to see a psychologist and all the things, and they wanted to put him on Ritalin. And I'd heard about Ritalin, but I didn't quite know much about it. So I said to the doctor, please can we make another appointment? I want to go and do a bit of research and come back to you. So that's how I started off with the natural living. I went on the computer, found out that it was really terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm not having my child on that. So they signed him off everything. He wasn't allowed speech therapy. He used to have inbuilt things in his shoes to help him walk because he was really clumsy. He wasn't allowed anything. If I signed that he wasn't having this medicine, it signed off for everything. So I was in a state because I didn't know what to do with him. So I started researching madly for about 2 years and discovered home education, discovered all the chemicals that are put in our body products, all the hideous things in food. And I was like, if this is having an effect on him, surely it has an effect on all of us. And that's where it began. And I've gone down many, many rabbit holes. And now I'm at the point where I'm the really weird person who does all the really weird stuff. But I believe that it's all the stuff that we would have done many, many, many years ago before the Industrial Revolution. And it's the stuff that's most natural to us. And living within our own cycles, within our own communities, within nature, within the seasons, I think that's where we need to be to feel anchored and secured and to live in our best lives. Sorry, that was really long.
Oh, please don't apologize. I thank you so much for being so open and sharing all of that. And I think it's so important to talk about all these things because, as you said, like, now you're the weird one. I smiled because I am that too. And for me, it was horrible that my mother was, but now I'm the same. And I think it's like just weird if you compare it to how the masses do it. But that doesn't mean the masses are doing the normal stuff and we're doing the weird stuff. It like really depends on your baseline. And as you said, the stuff that is in the products we use daily, from the thing that they call food mostly to everything our body through hair care, skincare, whatever, room diffusers, all the stuff that is there I was in fashion, so the chemicals in fashion was what really like put me to think totally different. And I think all of these little things add up so much. So the basis of what we call healthy living is not what it has been a few hundred years ago when all these things haven't existed. Not to say that everything was better then, that's not what I mean, but like the amount of toxicity, the amount of stress we put into our bodies through toxins, but also through like stress is so huge that I feel we've lost really connection to how does it actually feel if we're in tune with ourselves? And how does it actually feel if we're living in tune with nature? And if we do so and discover like, all these pains that I have, they might not be actually the baseline. It might be very much more lighter when I get rid of all this stuff, or when I change to a vegan diet, or when I switch like products and go for none of them or less of them or the organic version. And how much shift and like basically life quality we can get, and therefore the connection to ourselves. I think it's like really interesting how much like, this like life quality that is often thought about so superficially is actually a way for us to really connect with who am I? What am I here for? What am I doing on this earth? And really come back to ourselves. So I love that everything like kind of wove back for you, and all these years that you shared where you have been a single mom, or before like in that really toxic relationship, how much all of these challenges brought you to where you are now, where it feels like so open. And so, it looks to me like so much like wisdom from nature is just streaming into your life from all sides. And that's just so beautiful.
Yeah, it's lovely. And it's like I've come back to when I was a child. My dad grew veg in the garden, and my mum grew flowers and herbs, and had a lovely garden. We had loads of animals. We used to rescue animals, and my dad knew the park keeper, so anytime there was a duck injured, we'd take it in and, we'd look after the ducks. And it sounds like an idyllic childhood, and it was to some points, but my dad was very violent towards my mum, and they ended up divorcing when I was 7. And I think I'd got into that pattern of seeing my mum's life and the type of men she chose, and I just thought that was the normal thing, and then I did it, and then actually realizing that self-love, working on myself, loving myself and dating myself for those 2 years was key, I think, to coming back to myself. And now it's like I am that 6-year-old child. I mean, we only have a yard here, but I'd love a garden, a bigger garden with everything in it. But it is like I've come full circle, doing the things that I loved when I was a child. And that's what my business is, doing the things that I loved. It's like this remembering. It's like an awakening, a remembering. And I think that's what's missing. And then we get to a point where we go, oh, I'm an adult. I have to do adult things now and be serious. Do the serious things and be like, and obviously you do have to do some adulting, but I think if people can connect to that essence of what they did when they were children, I think the most important thing.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And I feel like, the adults that kind of have this childishness in them, you recognize the fun and the lightness and the joy, and sometimes like the not seriousness, or this like not being as reliable as we expected it from adults. But they are so different from the whole energy. And I think it's something we really should think about in this like society we live in, where we kind of have everything, but this too much of the pressure is often what we think is like protecting us from having fun and being lighthearted, because everything's so serious and you have so much pressure on yourself. And not to say that there aren't a few things that need to be done as an adult, like you say, but we can do them in a different way, and we can find different perspectives for them. And I feel like we can release at least half of them and life would still go on. So it's not that everything that comes to you just because you're an adult is actually like really necessary. I feel we've been talked into a lot of stuff that is normal. Then we're back at what you shared with your son. Like, of course, kids go to the doctor, get their vaccines, get their whatever. It's just normal. And then you are kind of punished if you don't follow that, like you shared with the Ritalin, and how much like pushback we get in situations when we don't follow the classical way. I think that is really why so many of us adults are like just going with the stream, because they feel it takes a lot of energy to go against it, and this like saying, no, I won't, and yes, I pay the price for all this, and I'm willing to like accept all the pushback, but I cannot look into the mirror if I do that one thing that is considered normal. So there has to be a lot of like intrinsic motivation to do it differently. And I feel we are kind of very slowly, a bit too slowly from my perspective, but very slowly like shifting into a society where we don't pressure each other so hard to be that normal way, but we are more open, or we learn to be more open to doing things differently and living our ways in lives that are not that linear, but that are really more reflecting more of ourselves. And like you said, coming full circle to what we might have already had fun, or what we might have already had discovered as gifts in our childhood.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I just want to touch on some of the points that you made there. I think the over-consumerism that we've been pushed onto through the media, through magazines, through everything, especially as women, like when you're teenage girls, the amount of product that, you get shown that, oh, you're not enough. It's all about not being enough, not being pretty enough, not being thin enough, not being whatever. And it's like, when you strip it all back and start living a natural lifestyle, you don't need 25 products. You just need one, and it's this relearning of what is actually normal and natural compared to what we've been told is. And I do think there's a lot of, I'm quite fiery. I'm a redhead, and I'm a Taurus, so I'm very stubborn and I'm very fiery. It's in my nature to call out things, and I'll do that quite happily in any situation. I know a lot of people would struggle with it because it is that pushback that you get. And I also think, unless you've got somebody in your life that gives you that little spark of knowledge or makes you think about something a different way, I think you're on a trajectory of I'm just going to call it normal, the normal consumerism. And I think it's not that they're unaware. It's not that it's not that they're aware and they choose not to be. I think it's completely unaware. Because I remember being like that. I watched Coronation Street, which is like a soap opera thing, yeah, all the soaps. I read newspapers. I listened to the radio. All my friends did the same things. There wasn't anybody that I heard that was different. So I thought that was the way. And it wasn't until I met Tom and one thing led to another that I heard something different, that I woke up to it. And it was really interesting because, so I never go to the doctor. I have been quite poorly. I have a condition called HS. It's a really long word that I can never say. But basically, I had a tattoo when I was 40, and the ink that they used sat in my lymph, and my body's always trying to get rid of it. And it's led to this. I get really bad flare-ups, which are like really big lumps under my boobs and anywhere you've got lymph nodes in your groin and things like that. And I was really quite poorly with it last week. And normally I just use all natural things and it goes away. And it wasn't going away. And I had a really bad infection that I could not shift. Tom was quite worried about me. And my friend that used to be a nurse was quite worried. And I kept going, I'm fine, I'm fine. But actually it's making me feel very poorly. So I went to the doctor, first time in years. And she was lovely. She was actually really lovely and really respected all my choices. You know, she kept saying, is there a point in me giving you things? Because will you actually take them? And, you know, she was really so nice. She was like, do you want me to actually refer you to the breast clinic for a mammogram? I was like, no, because I won't go and I'm not out, you know, like. So she was lovely and I was surprised. So I ended up getting antibiotics because I was in such a state with it. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because I went and then sat in the chemist. And I haven't been to a chemist for probably about 10 years. And I sat in the chemist and I was surprised because they don't give you paper prescriptions, which they used to do. And the lady behind the desk was having a conversation with a customer and they must have known each other. And it took me back all them years to when I used to watch Coronation Street and read the newspapers, because all they were doing were gossiping about how bad men were, who's sleeping with who, what's happening, you know. And I just sat there and it was like I was watching a show. It was the craziest, weirdest thing. And I was like, what is going on? And it is like I'd been transported back in time or something. And then at the end, when my prescription was ready, the lady behind the desk said, she went, oh, you've got all the gossip, haven't you, in here today? And I said, can I just say a couple of things, ladies? I said, this was really weird, a really weird experience for me. I said, you know, I grew up in Blackpool, which is a seaside town here in England, and it's very deprived. I said, I grew up in Blackpool, and I was there years ago. And it was like I was back in time. I said, I've been in your position, been in a domestic violent relationship. I said, my advice to you is you need to do work on yourself. You need self-love before you get with another boyfriend. And I was just come out with all this stuff. And then I looked at them and they were looking at me like I had three heads. They were like, who is this woman? I was just like, and when I left, I thought, I wonder if I was that one little spark of a person to plant a seed into their heads, because all the people that they were talking about sounded just like them. And I thought, they've got nobody to do that for them. And I did think, I wonder if that'll have a ripple effect where maybe they'll be in a shop and see a book that'll speak to them, or, do you know, something like that. So I do truly believe that we can all remember this way, but I think we do need something or somebody to give us that little gift of there's a different way.
Yes. I agree. I would almost bet like that you have planted a seed in there because you haven't been there listening to this for coincidence. There is no such thing. But well, maybe you never know what plant you've planted, what seed you've planted, what ripples out of that. But I feel it's interesting that you talk about that because authenticity is a very big thing in my world. And I feel like the more we are who we really are and not wearing any masks to be normal, not offend somebody, or for whatever reason, the more we can like really gift other people with the knowledge that we have, the energy that we have, what you just did by telling them what you've told them. And whatever happens afterwards is none of your business anymore. But this was you needing to like really speak that out. And that's for a reason, for the same reason that you and Tom watched The Secret together. And I love that you kind of discovered that together. That's like just so sweet. And I imagine like the light bulb going on. I had that moment too where I said, oh, what a world, how different life could be if I can actually take that in as truth, and how much life can change. And I feel whatever that thing is that activates us, if it's a movie, if it's like a book, or if it's a person, actually it doesn't matter. But the fact that we kind of can switch on something in ourselves that then leads to these whole other life, these actions that are so different from like you being sober and like using different products and eating different food and living in a different lifestyle. I think that can be activated by just one thing. That's actually such a fascinating way how we can change our lives, because I feel often there is this like, oh, I need to change something, there needs to be a change, but it's like more external pressure than an intrinsic motivation. But when you plant it and when you get activated for whatever reason, it comes from you, and then the change can be huge, and it doesn't have to be like that horrible thing that change often like seems to be, but it can be something you willingly do it. I love that. There's the like ability for us humans to change willingly and with joy.
Yeah, definitely, isn't it? One thing leads to another, I think. You know, like when I say it all in one go, it sounds like loads, but it's happened over 18 years. So it's one thing leads to the next thing, and then that leads to the next thing, and then before you know it, you everything's changed, and it's lovely. And I used to feel really quite guilty, I suppose, to say, my God, I love my life. Like, my life to me is absolutely fantastic. And I know a lot of people go, oh, you're so lucky. And I'd say I'm blessed. It's not by luck. It's by choice. I've made this life by choice, by lots of choices. And I am blessed, and I am very grateful for this life. Obviously, do I want different things? Yes, I'd love to own my own home in the middle of a field. Do you know what I mean? I'd love that. I'd love to have some more money every month to be able to go on holidays and things. There are always things more that you know that you'd love. But every day do I wake up with a full heart and feel I'm doing good in the world, I'm loved, you know, I'm safe. Like, that's just gold. Yeah, so it is lovely. And previous to that, I had no self-esteem, I had no self-love. I didn't like my life, which is why I drank and took drugs, because it was an escape from reality. And I feel sad for people that are still in that situation. And I think if we can plant the seeds and do the activation for other people in them, I think it's almost like a duty that we need to. Mm-hmm. Keeping quiet and keeping it to yourself, I don't think is the way to do it.
Yes. I love that you've touched on that. And before you shared about how you are built, the way that you'll just like have it easier, or you need to speak things out. I'm not that way. I was the one shoving all that down for so many years, and I thought kind of like I'm doing my closest one a service by not bothering them with my stuff. But it took me a really long time and so much effort to come to a different perspective where I said like, actually, it's not. Actually, it's kind of a sort of a manipulation, and it feels really hard to say that even now, because that's never what I meant to be. It was more like me having such a low self-worth, or were so disconnected from like wanting to care and love myself that I thought like, oh, I need to like take care of the others first. And it's kind of it's an escape, like you said, with the drugs. I think it's just a different escape, but it is like not looking at my own stuff. And what really called me out was, I think it was Michael Beckwith, who I really followed for a long time. And he said, if you have the ability to meditate, if you have the space and the time to meditate, it's not a nice thing to do. It's your must, because there are world who can't, and it's like it's actually your job to do that inner work on you, so that you can like ripple out that frequency, or however you want to describe it. It doesn't matter, but you need to do whatever you feel called to do, and whatever inner work you can do for your own sake, but also for the others. And when I heard that first, that was one of the light bulb moments in my life where I thought like, oh, okay, what a nice way to look at it. It's not a selfish thing. Actually, it is a very caring thing, but there's not an exclusion to it's caring for me or for others, because essentially we're all connected. So I can do both of them at the same time. And how beautiful is that, that there doesn't have to be that choice, and it doesn't have to be that judgment, but by us like leading a life that is more in tune, like working more with the cycles, because like we're one day before Leo full moon. So looking at the moon cycles, for example, the maybe most popular ones right now, if we do live more in sync with the moon, with nature, with the seasons, with our own cycles of however many years our soul chooses to cycle in, we can do so much good for ourselves, but also we can inspire others. We can like really, we can kind of like invite them into that world too, just by doing it for ourselves, which I think is like really beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. I was writing in my diary the other day. So I do morning pages and journaling every day to help clear my mind. And when I was 21, I tried to end my life. And I was writing in my journal, and I thought, if I'd have succeeded then, imagine all the people that I've touched in some way and inspired in some way. They wouldn't have had that gift. Like Tom's life wouldn't have changed so dramatically. I wouldn't have had two of my children. They wouldn't be alive and stuff. But I was thinking of all the women that have reached out over the years and still do, and say, because I watched your video, or because I did your workshop, or because you talked to me, I've changed this thing and my life's better. And I thought, that's really powerful to reflect on that. And I think as people, sometimes we don't believe, or we don't think that just doing one thing for somebody else makes a difference, but it actually makes a huge difference, or it can do. And really interestingly, this really links nicely into cycles, because when you were saying about talking and you kept it down, you kept it in, a lot of women do this. Our throats are actually directly linked to our yonis. If you look at an image of a throat and an image of a yoni, it's very, very similar.
The same, isn't it?
Yeah. And for a lot of women that don't speak their truth, they end up with a lot of throat problems, sore throats all the time, or tonsillitis and all this kind of stuff. And the same with if we don't orgasm. If we don't orgasm and we're not releasing, it's the same thing. We're keeping it in. We're suppressing ourselves. So as women, it's our duty almost to speak out, to say what we need to say, because otherwise we're keeping it in and we're repressing it, and then we're repressing ourselves, and that serves nobody. Yes. So that leads really beautifully into the cycles.
It does. And I think like everything is kind of so intertwined, because if you, for example, if you learn a bit about moon cycles, and you try to, even for the tiniest bit, adjust your life to fit them, you learn so much about your body, your moon cycle, if you're a woman, and you learn so much about when it's time to release, when it's time to rest, when it's time to like really recharge. So things go hand in hand. And what you said about like self-love and worthiness being really core issues in how we we move or how we do everything in our life. I feel looking back to nature and observing how nature does things and in which rhythms she does various things can be so beneficial to our own confidence, our own way of doing things. So there's a lot to learn only by observing. But if you then have someone who kind of activates you, and it often, like you said, what a beautiful thing to reflect on how many lives you might have touched with just one sentence, maybe. Sometimes it's just one word, one sentence that really impacts another soul so deeply. I feel even wrapping our heads around this can help us a lot to like remember the worthiness and the importance we all have, because we're not here for accident. And as babies, most likely we have remembered our worth. We have been like happy just being and exploring ourselves. And then somewhere along the process as children, kind of we lost that connection, but we can reestablish it and like really remember why we are here and come back to knowing that we don't have to do anything or be a certain way, but just by being us, it's the most beautiful gift we can gift ourselves and others. So there's actually no point in being someone else or trying to mold yourself into another form that you're not, which is quite a common thing for women in our culture, in our societies. It's kind of, I think it's really interesting how backwards we have it by trying to look as all the others do, trying to like behave as everyone else. But that's actually like totally upstream to what we're here for.
Yeah, definitely. I always think there's like 7.8 billion people or something in the world. And I can't remember the numbers, but the number that you were born is crazy. Like to just be carried in your mother's womb to term, that's like a huge number. For your dad's sperm to connect with the egg, that's a huge number. To be born alive, that's a huge. There's all these things, and it comes out to trillions, and I can't remember the number, but we're walking miracles. We're unique beings in that sea of so many people, and it's a miracle that we're even here in the beginning. So why would you want to be like another person when you are your own unique miracle in yourself? Like, there's no need to be like somebody else. You just got to be like you. And I think the more you are, the more you feel comfortable in yourself, the more you love your life, the more things come to you because you're attractive. You're like a magnet of authenticity. And you'll attract all these things and attract these people. And it's just a beautiful thing. And if I could change anything about the world, it'd be that everybody could be uniquely them. Not follow what's happening and going, oh, well, I'll kind of fit into that group, so I'll be like them. Really discovering it. But it is a hard thing to sit with yourself, like you said. Mm-hmm. Listen to yourself and sit with yourself. That's one of the hardest things for all that stuff to come up. Yeah, it's really, really lovely, I think, when you meet somebody like that. And you're right, you just need to look at nature. Like, there's 13 moons, we have 13 cycles, there's our period of our menstruation and everything is roughly 28 days. There's 28 days in a month. There's all these things that all link together, and it's just really lovely.
Yes.
And if you step into your cycle fully, you can harness it in such a good way. And I think this is a lot of the things that we've been disconnected from for so long, because I think at a point women became, what did they become? They become, I'm trying to think of it in a way where I don't go off on a really long tangent. So we had the revolution that made workers into workers and certain time and, all this kind of stuff, which is load of nonsense. And then women were at home and there was this thing of being suppressed almost, like, you're just a housewife, you're home looking after the kids. And then around the years, I think, when careers started to come out, when women wanted to be career women and all this kind of stuff, not saying any of this is wrong. If that's the path that people take, that's up to them. and just giving a bit of an overview. And now, if you want to stay at home and be a housewife and a mum, there is a bit of a stigma to it of, why would you want to do that? But the thing is, then we could tap into our cycles. We could rest when it was moon time to a certain degree. But now if you're working in a corporate job, unless you're working for a certain company, it's like you've got to keep going. But that's not natural and that's not normal. And I think this is why so many women have so many issues with their womb spaces and, you know, illness and things like the pill and being on contraceptives and stuff like that. The way it interferes with your hormones and then that interferes with your mind. There's so many things, and I think to really reclaim that as a woman is a powerful thing. So no, there's no, I can't think of the word. This is my perimenopausal brain kicking in. The words are going. Meantime, for me, when I bleed, is rest. I'm no negotiation. I won't go and do anything. For the first 2 to 3 days, I just stay home and I rest and I journal and I sleep. And that's all I do. Because I know that if I don't honour that and I don't do that then, next moon time comes along, it's going to be heavier, I'm going to be crampy, I'm going to be a lot worse, my mental health's going to suffer. So it's a non-negotiable. That's the word I was trying to think of. It's a non-negotiable that happens. Tom's aware that happens every month. He's ready with his cups of tea, hot water bottles and massages. I've prepared for that for the week before by bulk cooking, getting things in the freezer ready, making my tea blends up and things like that. So when it is moon time, everything's there ready. And I know that in what would be called my summer, which is ovulation, that's when you are feeling most beautiful. So like if you need to do a photo shoot for your business, that's when you pick to do it because you'll love the pictures. You know, if you need to talk, do a speech somewhere or present something, do it when it's in your ovulation period because you will be naturally more switched on with your mind and also you'll be more energized at that time as well. So there's all these little things that I think lots of women have forgotten and we can actually use it to our advantage in many, many ways instead of looking at it like it's a curse, oh, it's this, oh, it's terrible. You know, actually, it's a gift. And even if you don't bleed, so I've got a friend that's never had a period. She's had a baby, but she's never had a period, which is bizarre. She's like a miracle. She still has a cycle. Yeah. And when we've been through menopause and we're not bleeding, we still have a cycle. Our cycles still carry on. So it's really important. And our cycles are roughly 28 days and a man's cycle is 24 hours. So you can see why there's this massive difference in between us. Yes. About the way we handle things and the way men handle things and the way that men are energized. You know, their chart starts at midnight and goes round. So it's totally different. And to try and fit both together, if you don't understand each other in this way, that's when I think problems can arise. I'm very lucky that I'm with a man that's grown as long when I've been growing, and he's awakened as I've awakened to all these things. So I'm really grateful for that. And I know that a lot of women struggle with this and they'll say, well, you know, I can't just take 2 days off when I'm bleeding. I've got children but going back to my mattress story, when I used to, before we came on the podcast talking, I was saying about when I was a single mum and I was really tired, I'd get the kids to bring the mattresses down. We'd have movie day. If I was on moon time, when I was really shattered, we'd just have movie day and they'd have sandwiches for dinner. It doesn't actually matter. You've got to try and fit it into honour your own things.
And I think children, if we're talking about children, not about work, they get that. I know that when I'm really sick, which doesn't happen often, but my son gets it and he kind of adjusts. But only if I'm really believing that, like, we all have this, like, innate intelligence that kind of, he's more quiet. He's playing more on his own. I can take a nap. So I think the kids, they actually get that. And like you said, we can be creative in how we're handling these days when we're, like, on a period and there's, like, the rest phase is really needed, and we can honor that even if we do have kids. But it, as you so beautifully shared, it kind of needs of course, yes, awareness when and how, but also a bit of preparation of like not putting in all these big meetings or that deadline into that period of time, but like taking it a bit slower. And I wish I would have been so much in tune with my cycle when I was working really heavy 9 to 5, because I smiled when you said that, that if you don't rest on this moon cycle, then you will most likely like suffer more in the next one. And that was me for years. Kind of like life put the most craziest days on my first days of the moon cycle, and I've always pushed through because that's work and you cannot just cancel because and I'm not sick, this like proudness of I can push through that and work this like linear amount of work that I was suggested to all the people around me. All the like bosses that I've ever had were like, okay, you give your best every day. And it never even occurred to me that I could say like, okay, well, in these days, my best is a bit lower, I can give what I can give if I can take off, but it will look different. And I've kind of paid the price for that over quite a long time, even after quitting, until my body found back its natural cycle, found back like the empowerment that you can get through your cycle. And I know you touched on that before too. So many women suffer with their moon cycle, but me, I feel too, it's depending on our lifestyle, the decisions we make. It doesn't have to be like that. We don't have to like be in severe pain for many days and then like kind of fear the next month this coming over again. But we can like really ask ourselves, what is our body wanting to tell us with this? And by us taking the pill or smoking or drinking or whatever we do, to the stress, to the toxins and the food, is just like making it heavier for us to like really live in sync with these cycles and to really harness the wisdom that can come out of this. So one thing that came to my mind too is, and would love to know how you navigated that, is when I realized that actually the calendar we live by that has 12 months instead of 13 is kind of messing up with so much, including the moon cycle of women. I thought like, that's so unfair, It's kind of like someone on purpose tried to get us off sync with our own cycles, because it would be so much more obvious, even if we didn't have the background, even if we have no one to like really learn us that consciously, to see like, okay, 28 days with the moon, 28 days with my cycle, that kind of be connection maybe, So I feel it's made kind of like hard to discover that connection.
Yeah, I really think that it was done on purpose. I think it was. I think there's been lots of things done on purpose for women to forget their power, to be out of touch with themselves, because let's face it, a woman has a power portal. Our womb space is the space that we create from. Even if you can't have a baby, like a child baby, you can create from that space. Even if you've had a hysterectomy, the energy of your womb is still in that space. It's a flipping magical power portal that brings life into the world in many, many ways. And that is a massive threat to a lot of men. So, I think it has been done on purpose, and that makes me annoyed. That makes me really angry. Yeah, really angry. And I think the way that I do it is, because I'm self-employed, I can make my own calendar in a way. I am very seasonal, and I do very much tune into what's going on in nature. But the actual calendar of going, oh, it's January the 10th or whatever, it doesn't, I'm not actually that bothered. The only time I know the date is if I'm filling in a form on one of my envelopes to send to America. Otherwise, the date is totally irrelevant to me, unless I am charting when my moon times come in. I know that at the minute, it's in week 3 around a Thursday. That's the month, week 3 of the month. Before I used to bleed with the full moon, and now it's with the new moon. So it's irrelevant. I think to me, but I think it's harder if you go to work or if you've got children at school. But I home educated. As soon as I found out about home education, I home educated my younger two. So even the school thing there was no, it didn't matter what date it was. It didn't impact me in any way at all. What I do like to do is I like to follow the days of the week. So like on a Monday, that's a moon day, and that's a day for reflection, for going within, for imagining, for dreaming up ideas and things like that. Wednesday's a day of communication because it's with the god of Mars. It's all about the communication and things. So there's different days, Friday's Venus Day, so it's a day of love, romance, passion, things to make you feel good, and lovely foods, textures, all that kind of thing. I do like to follow the days in that way to do with the and everything. But yeah, the normal calendar, it's got no relevance to me at all. And I find time really annoying as well. Like, time's just totally made up. Christmas, over the Christmas period, my partner, he works full time in a job out the house, and he was off for 16 days, and it was the most blissful feeling. We didn't know what time it was, what time we were going to bed, what time we were getting up. We didn't have a clue what time. Oh, it's dinner time, quick, we best eat. There was none of that. You just really tuned into everything. Oh, I'm tired now, it's time for bed. Oh, I feel hungry now, I'll eat. It is and I think that's what's missing, because everybody's like, you've got to do this at this time. You've got 1 hour to go and eat your lunch at a specific time. What if you're not hungry then? What,
Really?
all these things. So yeah, I try and unfollow as much as I possibly can to try and stay in this natural alignment. But it is difficult because we live in a world that is ruled by time and the Gregorian calendar.
Yes, I feel like even if we could like start with these little things, like doing a bit of a reflection on Monday, on the moon day, or like having set a date up on Friday with ourselves or with a partner or whatever. Just like these little things that can like add lots of sensuality to our lives and lots of connectedness with ourselves, and over time it kind of naturally accumulates. So maybe it's not like you said before, like it took you 18 years to like really incorporate all of that. And I think it's not like, when are you done? It's always a lifelong journey, and there will be many things added or changed or however it's necessary. So it's not about a result, but about starting somewhere and getting this, even the awareness of connection back, and knowing a bit more about yourself and how you build. And like you touched upon, the cycles that women have that are 28 days long, and the cycles that men have that are like 24 hours long. And just becoming aware of more of that information, I think can do actually a lot in our lives, and we deal with everything. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Yes, we live in this world that is ruled by clear linear structures, time in a very like measurable way, and this calendar that we have, but we can still like attune to a deeper wisdom and hold it both in a way, I think. Yeah, it's a dance, definitely. It's a dance, but there is a possibility of like really building that in more and more, about it more and more, and connecting with other women, like you said so beautifully before, like how deep of an impact it has to have a conversation like this, even if we don't implement everything right now. But this is like kind of growing in ourselves, and then at certain point something else comes on. It's like, oh well, do you remember? And then we can go a little layer deeper. So I thank you so much for sharing all of this, and I'm kind of sad that we already crossed the 1 hour mark, because there is so much more that we could have incorporated. Maybe we do that again, and we jump in for episode 2, because yeah, there's just so much more to talk about and to go deeper on. I would love to like talk about more detailed practices, but yeah, maybe maybe in part 2.
Yeah, that's gone really quick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
isn't that interesting? But then again, that's a really good sign, you know? I think that is like we spoke about time. So the fastness that time can have or the slowness, I think it's really, for me, that's always an indicator of how much fun I have when time goes by really fast. That's just the most beautiful compliment. So thank you so much for that and for sharing all of your beautiful wisdom and the wonderful turns that your life took. That's really just so beautiful to witness.
Thank you for having me. Before I go, can I just say, if anybody's listening, you don't have to do everything right now. Even if you just pick one thing to start with, that's better than not doing any. But don't get overwhelmed by everything that we've talked about, because it is a journey.
You're so right. And I feel it's really necessary to remind ourselves because, like, there's this, oh, I can do this and this and this. And then often there's overwhelming and we kind of end up with doing nothing because it's just too much. But as you said, like the little things and then coming back and including another thing, if the one habit has kind of formed, is so powerful. The power is often in the slowness and in the cyclical structure more than it is in like the amount that we put in. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes.
And tuning into what you need, because everybody's completely different. So don't do it like me. I don't want you to do it like me. I want you to do it like you.
Isn't that the most beautiful compliment, to do it like yourself? I think that's because we started with self-love, and I think that's the ultimate like love letter to ourselves, to say like, I'm doing it the way I feel it's best right now. What more love can you give yourself in that moment?
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much.